Hi, I'm Misso.
Hi, I'm G,
And we're the Watching Dead.
So, now it's time for the best special of all specials.
It
ever.
is insane.
It's time for the Dixon brothers.
The Dixon brothers. There's so much to talk about.
I know, oh my god, we could be here like forever.
Yeah.
But we won't be. So,
I'm plugged in, right? Yeah.
let me think.
Well, like, we have Merle Dixon
Mm-hmm.
and Daryl Dixon.
Yes, and they're both awesome.
They are. It
Mhm.
takes a while for Merle to be awesome. But that's part of,
His charm.
yes, and also what we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Because they each have their own special arcs from season 1 to season 3, like character development wise,
Yes.
you know.
So who do you want to start out with?
Damn. Well, we'll start out with Merle.
Okay.
Goes from just this racist ass, that's our favorite
Yeah.
thing, and there's a screenshot that goes with it and a nice, font. It's season 1,
Mm-hmm.
a few episodes. He loses a few things, hands, and eventually we see him again in season 3,
Mm-hmm.
and wow,
Yeah.
once you get to see kind of what makes him tick, sort of makes him awesome.
Mm-hmm. You just fall in love with him.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He's so Merle,
I know. I know.
It's like there are so many reasons why I shouldn't care, but I totally do, man.
Yeah. Merle is really a great character.
Yeah, dude.
And when we first meet Merle, he is in Atlanta.
Mhm.
He is acting like an asshole.
Yes.
He wants to be in charge right then and there. He wants everybody to kind of bow down to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a racist.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to work with T-Dog because T-Dog's black. And he doesn't really seem like he has much respect for Morales
Mm-mm.
because Morales is Hispanic.
Yeah.
And he really just disses and ignores Glenn.
Yeah.
He certainly doesn't have any respect for Andrea.
No, because she's a lady.
Yeah, and that goes double for Jackie because
Yeah.
Jackie is black and female.
Damn.
Um,
We don't really get to see Merle.
we only see him for like, what, 2 episodes?
Something like that.
Not even 2.
But, I mean, it's enough to know that he's selfish.
Yeah, and
inconsiderate, crazy.
yeah,
Crass.
yeah. You really don't like him in season 1.
Right.
And then he's off screen. We see more there that, Merle is this tough guy.
Yeah.
And he is racist. He's got a lot of the old Southern to him. Yeah, he makes a lot of references, and it was interesting to parse his phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
And things like, I'd take a pause for the cause.
Yeah.
And he's constantly, kind of psychologically beating Daryl down. And then trying to rebuild him.
Yeah.
And that's tactic from the Army. That's something Merle learned while he was in the Army. Because that's the kind of psychological condition every soldier undergoes. But we don't really see much in the way of redeeming qualities.
Mm-mm.
In seasons 1 and 2. It's not until season 3 that we start to see that, no, there's a lot more to Merle
Right.
than even Daryl is aware of. We see that there is the, there is kind of the concern, the worry, the bond there. We see that he's not just a cold, callous jerk. Because when Andrea tells him about Amy being dead, he expresses sympathy and says, Amy was a good kid. And on screen, he seemed truly upset. He didn't show it. He's not showy with his emotions.
No.
But he was somewhat moved to hear that Amy had died, Sophia.
Yeah.
And that, he does not like when kids get hurt or killed. But he is definitely an ass to his brother. But he is an ass to his brother because that is the kind of dynamic they had to establish.
Right.
And he does a lot of these things because he's trying to protect himself. And he thinks that Daryl needs to be more like him in order to survive.
Right.
And he keeps referring to Daryl as the sweet one. And Daryl is. He's a lot nicer.
Yeah.
But there's sweetness to Merle. There's good in Merle.
There is.
There is. And that's why you wind up just kind of, despite yourself, loving that character.
Yeah.
And, just the on-screen portrayal was just so great.
Michael Rooker's awesome.
Yeah, he is. You think that Merle is dishonorable and that he will stab anyone in the back to advance himself because he puts himself out there like that. But you see that, no, that same core of deep honor and loyalty that is more apparent in Daryl is still there in Merle. It's just covered up.
Yeah.
Because where Daryl does not care about the external.
Right.
The external exists only to protect the internal. For Merle, it's the opposite. The external is extremely important. That's why he has to put up the front. That's why he has to put up the bluster. That's why he has to talk, the way he does. It's to obscure the internal, because the internal is weakness. And he's wrong.
Yeah.
But that was a psychological conditioning.
Yeah.
So that's a lot about Merle, just by himself.
Yeah.
What do you think on Daryl? Because, God, we know we both love Daryl.
Well, in the beginning, again.
In the beginning.
He was just rough. Now, hell, we're finished season 5 now, but very rough. Edge. There's edgy. I'm not trying to say edgy. I just mean he's got his rough edges, and he takes a while to not warm up to us because we're obsessed with him, but to sort of work his way into the group.
Yeah.
And for them, it works both ways. It takes a while for him to feel sort of comfortable with his role in the group, and then everybody kind of has to learn to oh yeah, that's just Daryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just how he rolls.
Yeah.
Very loner in the beginning. to, hey, you know, I'm second in command now.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't say that because he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Which is, you know.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting how both Dixon brothers wind up being the seconds in their groups.
Yeah.
And, you know, Daryl even goes further and can step up and lead, which Merle wanted to be able to do. And that was kind of almost an obsession with him in the first episode we see him. But Merle never really can step up and lead. It's not in his nature.
Right.
And to be a good leader. But they both wind up in very similar positions as second. They go from, you know, complete outsider status, complete on the fringe, you know, and they keep their roughness. They keep their, that. They never lose that entirely. But the rough edges do get smoothed a little bit. And they move inwards. And they become part of these different groups. Merle with Woodbury and Daryl with, you know, Rick and Company. And it's interesting because Merle and Daryl have pretty much the exact same background. And we can see in them how siblings can be extremely different people. I mean, you know, everybody who has a brother or sister knows that, you know, siblings can be so different. Be raised by the same family, go to the same church, the same schools, same socioeconomic status, and come out completely different. I mean, just look at me and my brother.
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, you couldn't find two more polar opposites than that. But Daryl and Merle grew up under Will Dixon. That was their father's name. And he was drunk and abusive, and he abused both of them.
Right.
You notice that they never take their shirts off.
Right.
The only time we see Daryl without his shirt is when Herschel was patching him up. And other than that, yeah, he's always got a shirt on. He usually has his vest on over that. Merle is always wearing a wife beater, and he usually has another shirt on over that.
Right.
And so they have these layers of protection. And the reason that they are always clothed that way is because they have these scars on their back from where their dad really just beat them. And the way that they deal with that is very different. Again, Merle goes with the external. He wants to shove the world away, and he wants to intimidate the world. That's why he's loud. That's why he's such a racist jerk. That's why he goes into the drugs and the drinking and, you know, crime. Because he wants to scare the world so badly that the world will never hurt him.
Right.
And that's his mindset. That he has to be, it is better to be feared than to be loved. Daryl pulls it all inwards. And he doesn't, yeah, he can get angry. He can get pissed off. We see that, I mean, the first episode we see him in. We see he can get mad. And he can get in some knockdown, drag out fights. He's not afraid of it. But he doesn't have the bluster. And he pulls it inside. He keeps it inside. You know, and he only lashes out when he's cornered.
Yeah.
And when he's cornered and he lashes out, it can get ugly. Luckily with him when it happens, he has probably the best person there with him. The person who is the most able to help him come to terms. And that's in the flip side of 4.
Yeah.
So that was a lot. But Daryl just tries to distance himself from it.
Uh-huh.
He tries not to think about it.
Yeah.
He, but it has become such a deep-seated part of him that he really can't let it go. Mm-hmm. And he sees himself always as this drifter, as this redneck, as this, low-status person, even as his status increases. Mm-hmm. And that's why he goes off in the woods and he hunts. And he stays out so much, is because he's trying to escape. If there's no one close to him, no one can hurt him. He doesn't care so much about scaring people.
Yeah.
He wants to avoid. And that's the two ways that they deal with it. And Daryl, he drinks. Not ever to the extent that Merle does. He does drugs, not ever to the extent that Merle does. He does it because of Merle. Mm-hmm. Left to his own devices, he's a completely different person. Yeah. And he even references that in 3A. Because he's like, yeah, well, when Merle was off at juvie, I could play with the other kids.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that they go off in these different directions, and they do well for themselves when they're apart.
Right.
You bring them back together, man, it goes to shit so fast.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, okay, yes, there's still the possibility in the back of their mind. They're like, you know where my little brother is?
Mm-hmm.
Or, do you know, we'll go find Merle, or Merle's fine, or whatever. But then when they each become, like, officially aware of each other's existence, mm-hmm. it's like shit goes south.
Yeah. Well, that's that bond between them, they're being brothers. Mm-hmm. That's their primary thing.
Yeah.
That is their primary identity. They are the Dixon brothers. Mm-hmm. And Merle, of course, has all of the instincts, let's say, that come with being the oldest. Mm-hmm. And he needs to find his little brother, and he needs to protect his little brother. He needs to make sure that Daryl is safe.
Right.
And he needs to make certain that Daryl can take care of himself. Uh-huh. And you never lose that. I mean, you're the oldest too, so you know what it's like.
Yeah.
You got your little brother out there, and it doesn't matter that he's an adult.
Yeah.
If something goes south with him, I mean, your first thought is, I've got to get there. I've got to take care of him. I've got to protect him. Mm-hmm. And you'll do damn near anything. Mm-hmm. It was the same way with Jerry when he was alive. Mm-hmm. I would have done anything to keep him safe. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter that, he was in his 20s. Yeah, it was whatever.
Yeah.
Didn't matter that I was living an ocean away. I'd have dropped everything. I'd have stolen a plane if I had to. Alas, I am human and wasn't able to fulfill that. And Merle, when he's parted from Daryl, feels that kind of failure, like he's let his brother down. And then when he finds out that Daryl's alive, his focus becomes, I've got to find him. I've got to assure myself that he is okay. Mm-hmm. And then I've got to bring him here, where I am, because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And then when Daryl finds out that Merle is there in Woodbury, I mean, instant younger brother mode comes on.
But he's my brother.
Yeah, I mean, his whole face changed, his eyes changed, his posture, everything about him changed.
Everything changed. It was perfect.
And they come back together, and they go off on their own. And we can see that there's been a lot of growth.
Oh, yeah.
On both parts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so great when they're together, especially right there at first. because Daryl falls back into the role of Merle's shadow.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of starts to fall back into the role of imitating, of mimicking everything Merle does. You know, like when Merle spits. You know,
And then Daryl spits.
Yeah. He has to do the exact
like
same.
It looked to me like completely like, okay, well, he did that and walked away, so now I'm going to do that and walk away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that sibling mimicry that used to drive both of us absolutely crazy. It was very well done, and the dynamic between the two characters was definitely, the writing and everything was spot on. Whoever wrote that episode obviously has a younger brother.
Good job.
Yeah. But through that episode, and that was episode 10.
It's home.
Yeah, because it's
home.
It's home. It was episode 10 because I've got it up there in the post-production queue.
Word.
We see the shifting dynamic. We see that Merle is no longer the leader, and Daryl is no longer going to blindly follow.
No.
And Merle is sitting there and he's bringing it up. He's like, did you ever tell them what we were planning? And Daryl, he would have gone along with it had Merle come back.
Yeah.
But now, hell no.
No.
And also Daryl finally puts his foot down and says, you know what? I'm going back where I belong.
Yeah.
He recognizes that he no longer has to be Merle's shadow. He no longer has to follow Merle around like a puppy. He can go back.
Yeah.
And Merle knows that he can't as easily go off with Daryl. One, because he's kind of burned some serious bridges.
Yeah, some big ones.
Yeah. But two, it's unfamiliar to Merle. Now all of a sudden he's the follower.
Right.
Yeah. And Daryl even points this out. He says, I might be the one walking away, but you're the one who left. Again, yeah. Because when they were younger, Merle left. And Daryl was then forced to face his father and the abuse by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out Merle leaves because he got into a situation where either he left by his own choice and on his own terms,
right,
or he was going to go to prison because he was ready to kill their father. Especially after your mother is dead.
Yeah.
It probably was so frightening that that's what led him to say, I've got to leave. I've got to get out of here. Psychologically, I have to flee, or else I can't handle this. To Daryl, it was simply his brother left.
Yeah.
And he never really could understand all the depth behind it, because Daryl is just, he's smart, but he's not analytical.
Yeah.
But going back, we see that at the end of Home, Daryl is now the one that's leading them.
Right.
Daryl is deciding where they're going to go and what they're going to do and how they're going to act. And Merle is falling in line. And it kind of even surprises Merle because when Daryl walks off, it takes him several seconds. One, just to, oh my God, Daryl is leaving me.
Right.
And then two, I'm not going to stand here by myself.
Right.
Three,
and you can,
I got to follow him now.
Right.
And I'm going to have to somewhat swallow my pride.
That's also another great.
Yeah, it was
and it's just a period of like 4 seconds or something. I mean, it's super quick.
Yeah.
But you can, it's just like, okay, this is what.
Yeah. Anyway, there's so much there, and there's that willingness also to sacrifice and to do what is right. And Merle does that, and he pays the ultimate price to protect his brother.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he did it. He doesn't give a shit about Rick.
No.
He doesn't give a shit about anyone at that prison aside from Daryl. But the rest of them can all go to hell as far as he's concerned. Especially Rick. Rick he actively hates.
Yeah.
But the rest of them he doesn't care about. But he goes off and he sacrifices himself for Daryl in a bid to keep Daryl safe, in a bid to ensure that Daryl will also be happy. And it's really great. But that about wraps it up for now. So for now, I'm G.
And I'm Misso.
And we're the Watching Dead.